On the night of June 12, 1958, just past 11:20 p.m., the emergency room at Harlem Hospital was unusually quiet. The hospital sits on 56 Lenox Avenue, right where it meets West 136th Street in New York. Outside, the air held at 68 degrees with 71% humidity. For Thursday, things were calm. Only 3 people were waiting: an older woman with chest pain, a construction worker holding a badly cut hand, and a young boy, 9 years old, bleeding from a gunshot wound to his stomach. The boy was fading. Everyone could see it. The doctors knew. The nurses knew. His grandmother sitting close by knew, and deep down, the boy probably knew too. His name was David Chun. He was 9 years, 4 months, and 11 days old. A Chinese-American kid, born right there in Harlem. He'd lived his whole life in a small apartment on the 3rd floor at 2156 West 131st Street. 2 bedrooms. He shared one with his grandmother. His parents slept in the other. That's how a lot of families lived back then. Close quarters, but they made it work. His parents worked long hours, every day. His dad ran a laundry shop. His mom worked too. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. They were chasing that American dream, sacrificing so their son could have a better future. But everything changed that Thursday night. At 9:47 p.m., David was walking home from the corner store. He'd gone out for milk and bread. 2 blocks away. That's it. A simple errand. The store was called Carlo's Market. It sat on Lenox and West 129th, owned by an Italian family, the Benedettis. Carlo ran the place, his son Vincent worked the counter, and his nephew Marco helped out. It was a neighborhood spot. People trusted them. They gave credit when times were hard, but even places like Carlo's weren't fully safe. They had to pay protection money to the local Mafia, the Genovese family. That was the deal in those days. Pay your monthly fee and no one bothered you. Refuse and things could get ugly. David's father, Michael Chun, had owned his laundry shop since 1952. 6 years of grinding, long days, building something out of nothing. The profits weren't huge, but it was steady. Enough to support the family, even save a little. 3 months before that night back in March, the Genovese family raised their rates. Doubled them, actually. From $50 a month to $100. No warning. No discussion, just a demand. Most businesses paid. Some cut staff. Some raised prices. Everyone adjusted. But Michael couldn't. Not because he was trying to be defiant, but because the numbers didn't work. His business made about $400 a month after expenses. That meant the new protection fee would eat up 25% of his profit. It wasn't doable. He explained this to Vincent Genovese, the collector. But Vincent didn't care about math or fairness. He was there to collect. That was it. Michael tried to meet him halfway. He offered $75 instead. Still more than before. Still painful. But possible. Vincent said no. The demand was $100. Take it or leave it. Michael asked for time. Just 1 more month to sort things out. Vincent gave him 1 week. Michael worked even harder that week. Cut every cost he could. Tried to bring in extra money. But by the time the week ended, all he had was $60. He gave it to Vincent, apologized, and promised the rest in a few days. Vincent took the money, but also left a warning. A message would be sent about the rest. That message arrived on June 12 at 9:47 p.m. David Chun was walking home from the store, carrying that small grocery bag with milk and bread. 2 blocks from home. On that same street, a black 1956 Cadillac was idling by the curb. Inside were Vincent Genovese and his cousin Marco. They saw David right away. They knew who he was. Michael Chun's son. The laundry shop owner who hadn't paid. The man who thought $60 was enough. The man who needed to understand what happened when debts weren't paid in full. Marco cracked the window halfway, reached for a small revolver. Nothing fancy. Just a regular .38. Quiet, untraceable. And then everything changed. David was about 30 feet away when it happened. He was walking home at a steady pace, not rushing, not looking over his shoulder. Just a kid, carrying a bag with milk and bread, thinking about schoolwork. Maybe what cartoons would be on tomorrow. Normal things. The kind of things 9-year-olds think about. That's when Marco raised the small revolver and fired. Just one shot. It wasn't meant to kill. Not right away. It was meant to send a message. A reminder of what happens when payments go unpaid. The bullet struck David in the lower right side of his stomach. It missed his spine. Didn't hit any major arteries. It was a clean shot, calculated, professional, meant to hurt but not end things too fast. David dropped the grocery bag. The milk spilled across the sidewalk. He dropped to his knees and looked down, confused. Blood was spreading across his shirt. A lot of it. He didn't scream. He didn't even cry at first. Just stared at the wound like he couldn't quite understand what had happened. Or why. Marco and Vincent didn't speed off. They pulled away from the curb slowly. No panic. No hesitation. The message had been delivered. Some neighbors saw the car. A few even caught the license plate. But reporting it? That was complicated. This was Harlem in 1958. A Chinese-American child shot on the sidewalk wouldn't bring much response. Maybe a short investigation. A file opened, but real justice? That wasn't something immigrant families expected. A neighbor found David just minutes later and called for an ambulance. He also called Michael Chun. The ambulance showed up at 10:02 p.m. 15 minutes later. Standard for Harlem at that time, but still far too slow for a child with a stomach wound. David arrived at Harlem Hospital at 10:19 p.m. The air team got to work immediately. Clean entry wound, lower right abdomen, no exit wound. The bullet was still inside. He was losing a lot of blood, but he was hanging on. Surgery was the only option. Urgent, risky, but necessary. At 10:47 p.m., they began. The surgery lasted an hour and a half. Doctors located and removed the bullet. But the real problem wasn't the bullet, it was what came with it. The round had shattered. Tiny fragments were embedded across David's intestinal wall. His intestines were torn in several places. The biggest danger now wasn't the bleeding. It was infection, peritonitis, a serious and often deadly infection of the abdominal lining. It spreads fast, especially in kids. The doctors gave David every antibiotic they had, full doses. But this was 1958. The options were limited. Penicillin, streptomycin, none of it strong enough. For what he was facing, the doctors did everything they could. They patched up what they could see, cleaned the wound as best they could, and administered every bit of medicine available. Then they waited. At 12:23 a.m., David was moved to recovery. Unconscious, stable, but only just. His condition was listed as critical. His chances of survival were 50-50 at best. Michael and Dorothy Chen waited outside the room. They weren't allowed in yet. There was nothing they could do, no comfort to offer, no hands to hold, nothing but silence, prayer, and guilt. Michael. Especially. He knew what this was. This was the message Vincent had warned about. Not a threat, not a warning. A real-life consequence. A child bleeding on a hospital bed over $40. At 1:47 a.m., David stirred. Just for a moment. He opened his eyes, barely. The nurse called the doctor and let Michael and Dorothy know. They rushed in. Their son looked so small, so pale, tubes connected. To him, bandages wrapped around his middle. Michael held David's hand. Dorothy brushed back his hair. David blinked, struggled to speak. His voice was soft. Barely there. "Papa." "Why did they shoot me? I was just getting milk." Michael couldn't answer. His mouth opened, but no words came. Dorothy stepped in gently. "You didn't do anything wrong, David. Some people are just bad. That's all. You'll be okay. The doctors are helping you. You'll be just fine." David gave the faintest nod. But deep down, he didn't believe it. He could feel something inside him off, wrong, like his body wasn't working the way it should. He looked at his father again. This time, he had one more thing to say. "Papa, if I die, promise me something." He paused, struggled. "Promise you won't let them do this to other kids. Promise you'll stop them. Promise me." Michael froze. What could he say? He was a laundry owner. An immigrant. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't powerful. But looking into his son's eyes, he couldn't say no. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Nothing came out. David's eyes shut slowly. He drifted back into unconsciousness. The moment passed. The promise neither made nor refused. Just left there, suspended between them. At 2:15 a.m. The recovery area had a visitor. Bumpy Johnson. He'd been at the hospital earlier that night, visiting a friend, Marcus Webb, who had taken a bullet to the shoulder 3 days before. A clean wound. Nothing serious. But Bumpy heard about the boy, about the message, and suddenly, everything changed. David was recovering slowly, but steadily. Each night, Bumpy Johnson came by the hospital, checked in on Marcus Webb first, then stayed around, not just as a visitor, but as a presence. Calm, watching, consistent. On his way out that evening, Bumpy passed through the waiting area and spotted two familiar faces, Michael and Dorothy Chun. He recognized them immediately. He'd met Michael twice before, brief conversations, respectful exchanges. He knew Michael owned the laundry business down on 130th, but tonight, the look on their faces said something was deeply wrong. Dorothy had tears in her eyes. Michael sat frozen, staring into nothing. Bumpy walked over. "Mr. Chun." "Mrs. Chun." "What happened?" Michael looked up. He didn't need to ask who was speaking. Everybody in Harlem knew Bumpy Johnson. "My son, David," Michael said. "He was shot tonight. Walking home from the store. He's in there now. Doctors say maybe he makes it, maybe not. We're just waiting." Bumpy's expression didn't change much, but his eyes shifted. Shooting a child wasn't normal. This wasn't gang stuff, Michael continued. This wasn't random. He hesitated. Saying it out loud meant crossing a line, inviting one kind of power to deal with another. But the legal system wasn't going to help. Not for an immigrant family. Not in 1958. Vincent Genovese and his cousin Marco, Michael said quietly. They were sitting in a black Cadillac. The neighbor caught the plate. "Vincent collects protection payments." "I couldn't pay the full amount. I paid what I had. He told me a message would be delivered." Michael paused. "That message was my son. 9 years old. Shot over $40. Bumpy didn't respond right away. He just listened, absorbing the names, remembering them. He knew of Vincent Genovese, a made guy, collector, operated in the Harlem Little Italy borderline, known to be forceful. But this was something else. Even in the criminal world, there were rules. And kids were off limits. "Can I see him?" Bumpy asked. Michael nodded. Inside the recovery room, Bumpy stood quietly at David's bedside. The boy looked small, pale, barely breathing. Bandages wrapped around his stomach. Machines monitoring every breath. Bumpy said nothing for a moment. Just looked. Then David stirred. Eyes barely open. He noticed a tall man beside him, well-dressed, serious, unfamiliar. "Who are you?" David asked. His voice was weak. "My name is Bumpy Johnson," he replied softly. "Your father told me what happened. I'm here to—" "Help." David blinked slowly. "Can you stop them? Can you stop them from hurting other kids?" It was the same question he'd asked his father. The same promise he needed. Bumpy glanced over at Michael and Dorothy, then looked back at David. "Yes," he said, "I can, and I will. I promise you this: Vincent Genovese will never hurt another child. Neither will anyone from that family, not in Harlem. You have my word." His voice didn't rise. He didn't sound angry. But the words carried weight. This wasn't a comfort. It was a contract. David nodded faintly, then closed his eyes. But this time, it wasn't from pain or exhaustion. He looked calmer, like something had settled inside him. Like a weight had been lifted. Bumpy stepped out of the room. Michael followed. They stood in the hallway, away from Dorothy, away from the nurses. A quiet conversation between two men. "Mr. Chen," Bumpy said, "your son asked me to stop them. I gave him my word. I'll keep that word. But you need to understand what it means." Michael said nothing. "When I act," Bumpy continued, "there's no undoing it. Vincent and his crew, this won't be a warning. This won't be a conversation. This will be final. There may be retaliation, police involvement, escalation, war, even. You need to be ready for that." Michael looked down, thought of his son bandaged, weak, maybe dying. Thought of the other families, the other kids who could be next. He looked up. "Do it," he said. "Keep your promise. Whatever happens, I accept it." Bumpy gave a single nod. "I will. Your son. He may recover. Or he may not. That's in God's hands. But Vincent Genovese?" Bumpy paused. "That's in mine." At 2:47 a.m., Bumpy left Harlem Hospital. It was Friday, June 13th. He gave himself 48 hours. Not because anyone asked, but because he understood something. David might not have much time. The boy couldn't leave this world thinking nothing changed. The promise needed to be fulfilled before then. Bumpy returned to Small's Paradise. Marcus Webb was there, fresh out of the hospital, his arm still in a sling, but mobile. And ready. Marcus was ready. Present, alert, focused. Bumpy laid out the situation. A 9-year-old boy shot by Vincent Genovese. A message over unpaid protection. Money. And a promise, a real one, made at a child's bedside. 48 hours to keep it. Marcus didn't blink. He understood the stakes. "Vincent's a made man," he said. "If we take him out, the Genovese family won't stay quiet. This isn't some local crew. This is La Cosa Nostra. The 5 families. They'll respond, and it'll be serious. Are we ready for that?" It was the right question. Strategic. Grounded. But Bumpy had already made up his mind. He shot, 9-year-old, he said. "That breaks the code. Even in our world, there are lines. Children are off limits. Always." He paused, then added, "The bosses might let it go when they hear what he did. Or they might not. Doesn't matter. I gave my word to that boy. I don't break promises." He looked at Marcus. "Gather the men. We're not just taking Vincent." The boy said them. That means everyone involved, everyone who made it possible, who enabled it, who profited from it. 7 names. 48 hours. It was Friday, June 13th, 1958. 3:47 a.m. Bumpy Johnson sat in the back office of Small's Paradise, 2294 7th Avenue in Harlem. A large map of Manhattan was spread across the desk, sectioned into zones. The Lower East Side, Little Italy, Chinatown, East Harlem. These were the overlap territories. The gray zones where the Genovese family operated and where Vincent did his collecting. Bumpy wasn't angry, not in a loud way. This wasn't about revenge. It was logistics, math, 7 targets. 48 hours. Marcus moved fast, made the right calls, activated their network. By 4:15 a.m., they had location data. Vincent Genovese lived above his uncle's restaurant at 127 Mulberry Street, 2nd floor. Usually home by 2 a.m., slept in most mornings. His cousin Marco lived a few doors down, 143 Mulberry, 3rd floor. Same hours, predictable. The other 5 were harder to trace, but not impossible. Anthony Russo, 38, Vincent's direct supervisor. He took a cut from everything Vincent collected. Lived in the Bronx, 2847 Arthur Avenue. Angelo Palmieri, 42, another collector. Same methods. Same violence. Brooklyn, 1156 Nostrand Avenue. Salvatore Costa, 35, logistics man. Handled transport. Queens, 8923 Jamaica Avenue. Thomas Lombardi, 45. The accountant. Quiet, clean, kept the books. Lived in Manhattan, 456 East 81st Street. Respectable address. Solid cover. James Greco, 29. Youngest of the group, eager, aggressive. East Harlem, 2156 East 116th Street. He was close and dangerous. 7 men. 4 boroughs. Bumpy had 24 trusted men. He split them into 7 teams, 3 or 4 men per target. Each team was handed a name, a location, and a schedule. The instructions were simple and direct. Make it final. Make it obvious. Don't hide it. This isn't about silence. This is about sending a message. Children are off limits, always. Friday, June 13th. 9:47 a.m. 12 hours after David was shot, Vincent Genovese woke up in his apartment alone. Groggy. He'd been drinking the night before celebrating. To him, the message had been delivered. Michael Chun would fold. Others would follow. Fear, he believed, was good for business. He stumbled into the kitchen to make coffee. But he never poured the first cup. Team 1 entered through the fire escape. Vincent had left the window unlocked. It was a mistake, one he wouldn't recover from. Raymond Lewis led the team. They entered quietly, found Vincent in boxers, half awake. Unarmed. No words were spoken. 2 clean shots. Center mass. He dropped instantly. On his chest, they pinned a handwritten note. Children are off limits. You learn too late. At 10:23 a.m., Marco Genovese was next. Same entry point. Same result. 3 shots. Same note. 2 down. 5 to go. 20-6 hours left. Anthony Russo would be harder. A seasoned veteran. Careful. Paranoid. His apartment was fortified. Security door. Peephole. Chain lock. Team 2 couldn't go through the window. They needed a different angle. At 2:47 p.m., Anthony received a phone call. Blocked number. He almost ignored it, but curiosity won. The voice on the other end spoke in fluent Italian. Calm, professional. There's been a problem, the caller said. Vincent needs you. Come to 127 Mulberry. It's urgent. It was convincing. Anthony believed it. Mistake. By the time he arrived at 3:15 p.m., the street was crawling with police. Vincent and Marco's bodies had been discovered. Crime scene. Tape lined the block. Officers moved in and out of the building. Anthony approached slowly, cautious. Asked an officer what had happened. Homicide, the officer said. 2 victims. Vincent Genovese and Marco Genovese, both dead. Anthony's heart dropped. He turned. Team 2 was already in position. 4 men. In the alley next. To the building. Anthony was taken fast. Professionals moved in, grabbed him, and pulled him into the alley where a van was already waiting. No one noticed. Police attention was locked on the crime scene. Most witnesses were still inside there. Buildings. The alley sat perfectly out of sight. The van drove north to an abandoned warehouse in the Bronx. Empty, quiet, secure. That's where Anthony's story ended. 3 shots, same pattern, same message. His body was left behind so it would be found. The point wasn't secrecy. It was clarity. At 6:47 p.m., Angelo Palmieri was next. Brooklyn. Team 3 followed him from his apartment to a social club. They waited, watched. When Angelo left alone and walked toward his car, they acted. Right there on the street, public, visible. No effort to hide it. Angelo went down immediately. People scattered, screaming, running. Police were called, but descriptions were vague. 3 well-dressed black men. That was all anyone could offer. Not enough. Police arrived within minutes. They found the note. Same message. Children are off limits. At 8:15 p.m., Salvatore Costa was killed in Queens. Team 4 forced his car off the road and into a concrete barrier. High speed, violent impact. Costa survived the crash barely. Trapped inside, disoriented. The team approached. 2 shots through the driver's window. Certain, final. The note was placed on the dashboard where police would see it. 5 men are gone. 34 hours passed. 14 remaining. Thomas Lombardi was different. He was the accountant, the man who knew everything, every payment, every business, every collector. The Genovese family protected him carefully, but protection only goes so far. That Friday night, Lombardi left his apartment for dinner. Upper East Side, an upscale Italian restaurant, public, supposedly safe. Team 5 was already inside. 3 men, dressed like customers, seated near the entrance, waiting. Wadi arrived at 9:30 p.m., checked in, and was led to a quiet table in the back. He sat down, relaxed, felt secure. That's when one man stood, walked straight to the table, and fired 3 shots at close range. Lombardi never stood a chance. People screamed. Chairs scraped. Chaos erupted. The team didn't run. They walked out calmly, exited the building, got into a car, and disappeared. Police arrived 8 minutes later. Lombardi was dead. The note was there. The message was unmistakable. 6 targets eliminated. 37 hours gone. 11 left. James Greco was last, youngest, most aggressive, most unpredictable. He lived in East Harlem, close to Bumpy's territory. Greco had a reputation, a fighter, an enforcer. Someone who enjoyed his work. Taking Greco required something different. This one couldn't be handled quietly. Saturday, June 14, 1958. 12:47 a.m. Greco was inside a social club on East 116th Street at Genovese. Hangout, cards, drinks, business. 8 made men with him, protected, surrounded. No team could storm that room without triggering a massacre. So Bumpy Johnson went himself. At 1:15 a.m., Bumpy walked into the club alone, no visible backup. Every man inside recognized him instantly. The room went silent. Hands drifted toward jackets. Everyone understood what this meant. Greco stood up. "You're in the wrong place," he said. "Wrong neighborhood. Wrong family. Walk out now. Maybe you live." Bumpy didn't move. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't reach for anything. "Vincent Genovese shot a 9-year-old boy 2 nights ago," Bumpy said calmly. Over $40. The boy is dying. I promised him something. He looked around the room. Vincent is dead. So is Marco, Anthony, Angelo, Salvatore, Thomas, 6 men. 40 hours. Then he looked back at Greco. Your last. The promise being kept. Greca's confidence cracked. 6 coordinated hits. Precise. Fast. If Bumpy was standing here, help was already outside. This wasn't a bluff. Greco looked to the others. Saw the calculation in their eyes. Survival 1.1. Older man spoke. This isn't our fight. We didn't shoot any kid. This is Vincent's crew. The others nodded. Agreement without words. Greco was alone. Bumpy nodded once. Smart. Greco understood. No protection, no backup. Just him. He reached for his gun. Bumpy was faster. 2 shots. Both found their mark. The promise was kept. Greco dropped instantly dead before his body touched the floor. Bumpy stood over him for a moment, then bent down and placed a folded note on Greco's chest. Same message, same words, same promise. He looked at the 8 men still seated in the room. Tell your people what happened here, he said calmly. Tell them why. Children are off limits. Always, no exceptions. Then he turned and walked. Out. No one stopped him. No one followed. No one wanted any part of it. Saturday, June 14th, 1958, 1:47 a.m., exactly 48 hours after the promise was made. 7 members of the Genovese organization were gone. Vincent, Marco, Anthony, Angelo, Salvatore, Thomas, and James, eliminated with precision. Quietly, quickly, permanently, the promise had been kept. The clock had been met. The message was complete. At 2:23 a.m., Bumpy Johnson returned to Harlem Hospital. He walked quietly into the recovery ward and found Michael and Dorothy Chun still waiting, still hoping David was alive. But just barely. The infection had spread. Peritonitis confirmed. The antibiotics were holding on, but only just. The doctors said hours, maybe 12, maybe less. Bumpy stepped into the recovery room. David was conscious but fading. His body was weak. But his mind was clear. Mr. Johnson, he whispered. His voice was thin but steady. I kept my promise, Bumpy said softly. Vincent is gone. So are the others. That won't hurt anyone. Not you. Not other kids. It's over. David nodded slowly. A small smile crossed his face. Thank you, he whispered. Other kids, safe now. That's good. His eyes closed gently. No pain. No panic. Just peace. David Chun passed away at 4:47 a.m., Saturday, June 14th, 43 hours after being shot. 3 hours after the promise was kept. He died knowing something had changed, that justice, real justice, had arrived, that his voice had mattered, and that a promise made had been a promise kept. His final words were simple. Thank you. His final expression was calm, 9 years old. Gone over $40, but remembered forever. The NYPD investigation that followed was the largest Harlem had seen in years. 7 men from the Genovese family, all killed within 2 days. Each body had a note. Each note carried the same warning. Children are off limits. Detectives saw the pattern immediately. This wasn't random. It was coordinated. It was deliberate. It was professional. They traced it back, found the David Chun shooting, a child injured. 48 hours later, 7 made men dead. The math was simple. The motive was obvious, but proving it? Impossible. There were no witnesses, no recovered weapons, no fingerprints. No one willing to testify. Everyone knew who was behind it. Bumpy Johnson, but knowing and proving were 2 very different things. The case remained open, but it went nowhere. 7 murders, 0 arrests, 0 convictions. Within the Genovese family, emotions ran high. Losing 7 men was a serious blow, but this wasn't business as usual. Vincent had crossed a line. He shot a child. There were rules, and everyone knew them. What happened to Vincent? That was on him. What happened to Marco and the rest? That was harder. They hadn't pulled the trigger, but they enabled it, backed it, benefited from it. In the end, the leadership made a choice. No retaliation. The message had been received, loud and clear. A new rule was added. Written in silence, enforced in full. No targeting children, ever, under any condition. Violation meant death, no protection, no appeals. From that night on, the streets changed. The line between Harlem and Little Italy stayed tense, but understood. Collections continued, but differently. No threats against families. No violence. Toward innocence. Bumpy's promise echoed louder than fear. Everyone remembered. David Chun. Everyone remembered the 7 who died. Everyone remembered what Bumpy Johnson did. Michael Chun closed his laundry business 3 weeks later. Too many memories. Too much pain. He and Dorothy left New York, moved to San Francisco, started fresh, new city, new life, but they never forgot. Never forgot David. Never forgot the man who kept a promise. Bumpy Johnson attended the funeral. C. James Church. A small gathering, mostly family, a few neighbors. He sat quietly in the back. No speech. No grand gesture. He was just there. After the service, Michael found him. He didn't say much. Just thank you, Bumpy nodded. No explanation needed. A promise had been made. And a promise had been kept. Years later, in 1967, a journalist writing a feature on organized crime in New York spoke to dozens of sources, former gang members, retired officers, old contacts. One story came up again and again. The story of a boy named David Chun, shot on the streets of Harlem. And the 7 men who died 2 days later, promise made. Promise kept. The reporter tried to verify the story. He dug into the records, 7 homicides, all within the same 48-hour window. Same notes left behind. Same message. But the details were thin. No arrests, no official statements, no convictions. Still, the pattern was undeniable. He traveled to Little Italy, asked questions quietly, about Vincent Genovese, about the others, about what really happened. Everyone knew. But no one spoke on the record. Off the record, people confirmed it. Vincent had shot a child. And within 2 days, Bumpy Johnson responded. 7 men dead. No secrets. No hiding. A message sent and received. Children are off limits. Forever. The reporter wrote the article in 1967, 9 years after the night it all happened. He titled it simply, The Promise. It told the story of a boy named David Chun, of the man who stood up for him, and of what happens when a line is crossed. Saturday, June 14, 1958, 1:47 a.m., the 7th man fell, the final name on the list. The promise complete. 4:47 a.m. David Chun took his last breath knowing what had been done. Knowing justice had arrived, 11:47 a.m. funeral arrangements were made. Michael Chun began the process of saying goodbye. Bumpy Johnson returned to Harlem. Quiet, focused, present. From hospital bedside to 7 bodies. To one boy's final piece. 40-8 hours, not revenge. Not chaos. Just one man keeping his word. David had asked for something simple. Stop them. And Bumpy had answered, permanently. 7 men gone. One promise kept. One child died knowing his pain meant something, knowing other children were safer because of him, knowing he wasn't forgotten. That's what made it a legend. Not the violence, not the headlines, but the fact that a promise really was kept.